kind of concern me on a whole series of levels. And it's one of the reasons why I think Senator Rubio and I have voiced these concerns. It concerns me from an intelligence standpoint in making sure that China doesn't have access to information they could use from an intelligence ability to potentially blackmail or take advantage of Americans' data. It concerns me from kind of future technology development as we think about the possible uses of artificial intelligence. And it concerns me as a parent that a lot of young kids may be, while they love TikTok, may be potentially exposing themselves for something that might not pop up until years later. But I would say if I had kids at that age still, I would put some real restrictions on any kind of utilization.
As you already know, it's owned by ByteDance, which is a Chinese company. And ByteDance is obligated to operate under Chinese law. And there's something called the National Intelligence Law in China that requires two things. One, that every company in China cooperate with its security agencies in collecting information. And then two, that those platforms or those companies not reveal that they have done so. In other words, not reveal that they've participated in any kind of collection activities on behalf of the Chinese government. So now let's fast forward to TikTok. TikTok is owned by ByteDance, and it has repeatedly clarified, even before the Senate recently, when Senate Homeland Security Committee member Rob Portman very directly asked them, do you or will you commit to not sharing data from the United States to ByteDance or anybody in China? Their executives refused to do so. They just would not answer that question forthrightly, nor would they answer the question about, making sure that, ByteDance would not be able to access this data. In fact, the opposite is true. ByteDance does access this data, and a June BuzzFeed report showed that ByteDance employees have accessed that data repeatedly over time.
This has been a problem with TikTok for some time. They have continued to make representations that American data is stored safely, that there's no intervention by Chinese engineers, but just the nature of any technology company that is located in China. And while TikTok is not directly a Chinese company, it's controlled by ByteDance, which is truly a Chinese company. And the fact that the Chinese Communist Party rules require all companies to be more loyal to the Communist Party than to even their shareholders makes this ability for TikTok to claim that they've got a strict barrier really suspect. And matter of fact, we have seen other media reports over the last number of months, and this is what generated Senator Rubio and I to write the letter that said, even though TikTok has said, don't worry, American data is safe, that there has been evidence of Chinese engineers getting access to that data. Clearly, the underlying code that goes into TikTok applications, there is a TikTok type clone in China that, again, ByteDance, which is the Chinese holding company, writes that code. A lot of that code is brought over to TikTok. So the idea that you can somehow build a Chinese wall to separate this, it just doesn't pass the smell test. Now, starting when President Trump raised the concerns about TikTok years ago, there have been efforts to say, well, if we store the data on American servers, if there's a new governance structure, we can perhaps meet Americans' security concerns. Those negotiations have not finished. I'm still going to give them the chance, if they do finish, to look at that product, but they've got a really steep hill to climb with me that American data is not going to be vulnerable.
It's an open question. I think there are two concerns that I have. One is what you raised, which is can ByteDance, on behalf of the Chinese government, in any situation, potentially exercise influence over that algorithm? And then two, does it actually collect on U.S. persons in any way on behalf of the Chinese government. That's why, for instance, I don't have TikTok on my phones. I believe that the House Administration Committee has asked all members of Congress not to install TikTok on any of their phones. And I think the same is true in the military, where there might actually be a requirement. But I tell people, look, you have to assume the worst in these situations. And given the national intelligence law in China, you just cannot avoid the conclusion that the Chinese Communist Party, if it wanted to, could easily access data on our phones in the U.S.
We don't know. We do know that the ByteDance type applications to China, there's Communist Party propaganda built into that application in China. And the idea that this Communist Party, the CCP, would not use that same tool to indirectly get at, entities in America, or for that matter, around the world. I think you got to suspect if they've got that tool, they will put it to use. As we've seen with other Chinese platforms, for example, there's a Chinese major company called WeChat that is used by folks in China and also the Chinese diaspora all around the world. And clearly there are manipulations going on that platform. So the idea that somehow TikTok would be immune from the Communist Party's ability to use these platforms for propaganda, you got to